Well, good morning. Thanks for being here. It is an important moment in the legislative schedule. This is the moment in time where budget targets will be agreed to soon. And the decisions that we make about those budget targets will really determine whether we're going to starve our schools or not. All Minnesota children deserve access to a great education across the state. But right now, the choices that Minnesota Republicans are making with the whole budget picture are leading to budgets that would shortchange Minnesota's children. Despite the fact that we have a surplus, the budgets that Republicans have passed in the House and the Senate would result in teacher layoffs and reduced services for our children. Instead of properly funding our public schools, in the tax bill, they're shifting resources to private schools. It's the wrong direction for Minnesota. Earlier in the week, Republicans had a press conference to talk about closing the achievement gap. It's not going to help us close the achievement gap if we underfund our K-12 system, and especially our early learning system. Speaker Dowd and the Republicans have prioritized tax cuts. We have 80% of the surplus going to tax cuts in the Republican budget, and this means an austerity budget for our schools, a budget proposal that looks like we have a state budget deficit. We're inflicting cuts on our schools at a time when we actually have a surplus. These cuts to our schools have a real impact. A lot of us who are involved in politics got involved because we were active in our parent-teacher organizations at our elementary schools. And we were doing things like raising money to buy computers so that children could take MCAs, things that you would think the school district should have the money to pay for. We were running readathon programs and doing supplemental reading assistance for elementary school students, things that you'd think your school district would have the money to pay for. And a lot of parents who are active in the parent-teacher organization then decide they're going to get active in state politics because they see the decisions that get made here in St. Paul have a direct impact on the quality of experience that our children have in our local schools. We have some teachers here to tell us about the real impact that these budgets would have on our schools. And first, I think I'd like to introduce Christie Sanders. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Christie Sanders, and I'm a reading specialist at Jefferson Elementary in Rochester, Minnesota. Ever since I can remember, it was my dream to be a teacher. And in fact, as a child, my neighbors were subject to a few of my classrooms, even on the weekends. I've been a classroom teacher for almost 15 years. My day begins with data meetings, bus duty, a quick bathroom break before my students come bounding through the door. My schedule is a revolving door between reading support and mental health until the time I go to lunch. Lunch is my time to eat very quickly and send a few emails before diving back into my afternoon. My afternoon looks much like my morning, and before I know it, the end of the day bell is ringing. I have a few moments to catch up on those emails that I missed, and then I'm off to after-school meetings or I'm rushing out the door. Generally, I'm racing home to head off to my second job. Yes, I said second job. I can honestly say that I never thought at 37 years old I would be stocking shelves at a grocery store to try and pay all of my bills. The cost of my health insurance continues to rise, which means visiting a doctor isn't always an option for me. And each month I'm constantly reminded of the amount that I owe for my student loans. And I can honestly say that I'm not exactly sure when I'm going to be able to pay those off, although I can tell you it's probably many years down the road. We give of ourselves so great that teachers are physically and emotionally exhausted. I have given out many Kleenexes and many chocolates this year to teachers that just don't know if they can continue doing this job. And let's face it, our schools are underfunded. Teachers across Minnesota are doing whatever they can for their students. I shop for school supplies, shoes, snacks, any of the necessities that kids need in order to be successful. And underfunding our schools is not giving us what we need. Teachers are the most important thing in that environment. And what I do matters. So please, keep that in mind as we're looking towards this budget. Thank you.
Next we have Cindy. I'm not going to say your last name right, so you can tell us how to say it.
Hello, My name is Cindy Huesemann, Huesman. I have been a FACS teacher for the Rochester School District for 22 years now. FACS means Family and Consumer Science. Prior to this, 1 year at White Bear Lake and 1 year at Wyalusing Academy for emotionally and socially disturbed students who were sent there by the court system. I am here to tell you it is critical to avoid cuts in the education. My budget has not increased very much since I started 22 years ago. When I started, I had a budget to help support all my classes and had money to transfer over to the next year's budget. Not now. I am barely making it now with the budget. When I started, I had 4 foods classes, and now next year I will have 14 foods classes. Food packages have become smaller, and prices have not. More students in labs mean more wear and tear on equipment, which means needs repairs and needs to be replaced. Majority of my budget goes to the foods classes. I do have other classes that I teach. They're all hands-on classes. That is career planning, a relationships class, a fashion and design, interior housing, and finally a parent-child class. Students may earn honors option and art credit in several of these classes. All these classes are career focused, and they are elective classes right now. If the budget decreases and doesn't increase, options for students will decrease because the class sizes will decrease, and class sizes will increase. Classes will be cut because of this. Why not invest in the students at the beginning of the economic system than later in life when they are adults? How about investing in students and require them to take a personal finance class and learn how to budget appropriately versus bailing out people later in life with bankruptcies and welfare? How about investing in our students now and require them to take a parent and child class and learn the proper prenatal care, stages of development, and responsible parenting skills versus paying for welfare, medical bills for those who have lifelong consequences because of poor prenatal care or parenting skills, court costs because of neglect and abuse, and children in foster care costs that we have in the state of Minnesota. Like I tell my students, anyone can have a baby, but not everyone knows how to be a responsible parent. Let's break that cycle with the educating them now. Please rethink the budget and make sure our children are supported in every way they can be now, today, and in the future. Thank you.
And next we have Michelle Denard.
Hello, my name is Michelle Denard, and I'm a special education ESP in the Osseo School District. And I want to speak to you about the voucher program moving through our house. The voucher program has a lot of redefined moments that you do not know about. Voucher programs don't help families, they actually hurt families. Private schools can pick who they want in their schools and who they don't want in their schools. In private schools, there are many hidden expenses. I speak of what I have experienced. My own children were in private schools. There are plenty of the extra costs. There are the costs where they don't tell you about for transportation, for food, for tutoring, for the extra help for your children, and so forth. I asked my children, once I removed them out of the private schools, if they could go back to private schools, would they want to? And my children stated to me, I quote, "Absolutely not." Public education offers so much more over private education. For my family, it was the best thing that I could have done for my children. They were more prone to get the extra help that they needed, and they got to experience a lot of different things that they didn't in private schools. So actually, they benefited from going back to public education. My children are better because we left private schools. Voucher programs actually hurt public education. They don't help Minnesota children. Thank you.
Thanks, and I just would like to acknowledge, we have one more teacher, Deborah DeYoung.
Good morning. My name is Deborah DeYoung. I'm a biology teacher at Mayo High School in Rochester, Minnesota, the one with the planetarium that many people covet. The lack of increase of the education bill will affect the quality of our student education. The Minnesota workforce, and a few years back I was part of that workforce, looked at and projected an increase of need in the healthcare professions and science in our biotech expansion. The employees sat with a group of teachers and talked about what the needs would be for the future of students coming to their jobs. This led to an increase of what we call STEM education and laboratory-driven science courses. These courses cost more money. The students do enjoy the hands-on laboratory experiences. It helps them build the skills that the employees want the employers want for their employees. Increased cost comes in technology that's involved in these more complex labs, the lab supplies, and continuing education for the teachers. As different discoveries are made in science, there's different lab techniques, and we need to keep current with what our future employers and the employers of today want in their students, or in the employees that they hire. So yes, it does cost more to educate students today. Cuts that I see impacting me in the sciences department at Mayo High School and other schools in Minnesota, the larger class sizes will mean a decreased hands-on experience, decrease of skill building that's required for their future employment, and we already have over the limit of the state recommended safety guidelines and number of students in the lab classes. We must prepare our students for the Minnesota workforce and keep them here. Increased funding is a way to do this and to keep our strong Minnesota education tradition with us. We are proud of that.
And I'd just like to acknowledge the wonderful leaders from the DFL House Caucus who are here. Jim Dabney is our lead on E12 issues, and we're also joined by Clark Johnson, Joanne Ward, Mary Kunesh-Pudin, Connie Bernardi, Frank Hornstein, and Lori Halverson. And we worked really hard to put forth an alternative vision. You know, this is not the way that it has to be in Minnesota this year. Representative Dabney led the DFL members on the E12 committee in coming up with a package that would have provided 2.5% and 2.5% on the general education formula, in addition to a number of other things to help students in Minnesota. This is the kind of choice we should be making for Minnesota's children when we have a large budget surplus. So with that, we'll take any questions.
The people who support the tax credits say this is a means of reaching more equity and more erasing the achievement gap. And that would imply that it's means tested. Are these credits means tested in any way?
They would be means tested, but the flaw in the Republican plan is that the tax credits they're talking about creating, there's already incentive for people to donate to 501c3 organizations and to indicate that they would like to assist particular students. We don't need that at the state level. Businesses can already get that tax exemption. So why are we giving away state dollars to help just a few people when the education budget will help 865,000 students? So I think what we're seeing in the Republican choices in their tax bill versus their E12 bill is putting just a few Minnesotans' interests ahead of all of our school children. So whether it's the estate tax expansion that helps only 1,000 families, when instead we could be putting money on the formula for 865,000 school children.